In the dim glow of distant stars, Captain James Holden stood rigidly against the viewport of the HSS Pioneer, his gaze fixed on the sprawling mass of Starpoint Delta as it orbited a luminous blue gas giant. The weight of the impending summit pressed down on him like the gravity of a neutron star. Today, he wasn't just the ship's captain. He was humanity's envoy, a beacon of hope in a galaxy teetering on the brink of discord. Starpoint Delta shimmered against the backdrop of space, its myriad lights twinkling like a microcosm of the galaxy itself. The station, a marvel of engineering, sprawled across kilometers of space, its modules and docking bays clinging together in a delicate balance of metal and ambition. As the Pioneer approached, the station's grandeur became evident, its hull carved with the sigils of countless civilizations, each telling stories of alliance and conflict. Holden felt the familiar thrill of space travel mingle with a gnawing anxiety. The Galactic Unity Summit was his mission, his burden. The air in the command deck was thick with tension, the crew's murmurs a low undercurrent beneath the hum of the engines. They looked to him for leadership, for reassurance that their role in this historical event was not just a testament to human ingenuity, but a genuine step towards universal peace. The viewport framed Starpoint Delta as a beacon of cosmic diversity. Alien vessels from the far corners of the celestial expanse mingled with human-made ships, their designs as varied as the species that piloted them. Holden's eyes traced the sleek lines of a Cillian cruiser, its surface a mosaic of light-absorbing materials, then shifted to the robust armored freighters of the Uruk conglomerate. Each ship was a declaration of its people's culture and technological prowess. As the Pioneer docked, the reality of the task ahead settled in. Holden straightened his uniform, the fabric stiff and unfamiliar in its formality. This summit isn't just about diplomacy, he reminded himself. It's about proving that humanity can stand alongside these interstellar giants as equals. Stepping onto the docking bay, Holden was struck by the cacophony of alien languages, the air rich with the tang of ionized particles, and the sharp scent of ozone. The artificial gravity tugged at his limbs, a subtle reminder of the unnaturalness of this floating metropolis. Around him, delegates conversed in animated clusters, their gestures ranging from the subtle flicks of the Tyrovian's slender fingers to the emphatic arm waves of the barrel-chested Gorvani. Each step took him deeper into the heart of Starpoint Delta, through corridors lined with holograms of historic treaties and battles that had shaped the galaxy. The walls pulsed with the soft glow of bioluminescent plants, a gift from the forest world of Nyxeria, casting ghostly shadows that danced just out of sight. Holden's first meeting was with Ambassador Thalia, a human diplomat whose years navigating the delicate intricacies of intergalactic politics had etched lines of wisdom and weariness onto her face. James, remember, every species here has their agenda, their fears. Listen before you speak. Weigh their words carefully, she advised, her voice a soft contrast to the buzz of the crowded summit halls. As he nodded, absorbing her counsel, Holden felt the weight of his role as humanity's representative. This summit was more than a political gathering. It was a test of humanity's ability to weave their thread into the complex tapestry of galactic civilization. With the station spinning slowly against the endless night, Captain James Holden stepped forward, ready to face the galaxy with a resolve forged in the fire of human spirit and the cool calculation of a born leader. He knew the road ahead was fraught with unseen dangers, but it was a road he was determined to travel, for peace, for unity, for the future of all. Aboard the HSS Pioneer, Captain James Holden paced the length of his cramped office, the soft hum of the ship's engines, a constant reminder of the ceaseless machinery at work. Walls lined with screens displayed real-time updates from the summit, each flicker a pulse in the lifeblood of interstellar politics. Holden's face, illuminated by the glow of a nearby console, carried an expression of deep concentration. His eyes, a sharp blue, mirrored the vastness of space he had traversed. A man in his early 30s, Holden had the lean build of someone accustomed to the rigors of space travel, his movements precise and deliberate. The office was stark, functional, with a map of known space dominating one wall. It was here, in this unadorned sanctuary, that Holden grappled with his dual roles as captain and diplomat. The weight of human hopes, tangled with his own aspirations for peace, settled around him like a cloak. Holden's journey to this point had been marked by a relentless pursuit of knowledge and understanding. Raised by a diplomat mother who served on the first contact teams, his childhood was a mosaic of alien cultures and languages. This upbringing instilled in him a profound respect for diversity, along with a burning desire to see humanity take its rightful place in the cosmic community. Now, as he prepared for his next meeting, Holden reviewed the dossiers of the alien representatives. His mind was a whirlwind of facts and figures, diplomatic incidents, and potential points of contention. It was a mental chess game, anticipating moves and counter-moves in the intricate dance of diplomacy. A soft chime signaled the arrival of his first appointment, a representative from the Mithraeum Confederacy. As he straightened his uniform, Holden took a deep breath, centering himself. The air was cool and recycled, faintly tinged with the ship's unique blend of antiseptics and metal. He stepped out of his office, his gaze set with determination. The corridor outside was bustling with activity, crew members and aides moving with purpose. Their nods of respect and murmured greetings bolstered his resolve. The meeting room was a stark, circular chamber at the heart of the Pioneer. As the Mithraean delegate entered, a towering figure with iridescent skin and delicate wing-like appendages, Holden extended a hand in greeting. The Mithraean's touch was cool, its eyes gleaming with a sharp intelligence. "Welcome aboard the Pioneer," Holden began, his voice steady and welcoming. "I hope our discussions today will mark the beginning of a fruitful relationship between our peoples." The delegate nodded, its voice a melodic hum. "Captain Holden, your reputation precedes you. We are eager to see if humanity is ready to join the ranks of the galactic community." As they settled into the discussion, Holden was acutely aware of every word, every gesture. The stakes were high, and the path fraught with complexities. Yet, amidst the diplomatic overtures and strategic positioning, Holden's thoughts drifted to the broader horizon. A future where humanity stood not just as participants, but as partners in the grand tapestry of the galaxy. Holden's resolve deepened, the challenges of the summit not just obstacles, but stepping stones to a greater destiny. With each word exchanged, the foundation for that future was being laid, one conversation at a time. Across the expanse of stars, Warlord Drake watched from the command deck of the Zorvax fleet's flagship, the Dominator. The vessel, a menacing leviathan of steel and dark energy cores, floated ominously against the backdrop of the pulsating nebula. Drake's piercing gaze swept over the holographic displays projecting the intricate layouts of Starpoint Delta and the positioning of various interstellar delegations. The Warlord's features were chiseled and harsh, his skin a deep shade of obsidian, marred by scars that spoke of numerous battles. His eyes, glowing faintly with a tinge of crimson, reflected a mind that danced with dark schemes. Drake was a figure of imposing stature, his presence commanding and fraught with a palpable intensity that filled the room. Drake's office was a fortress within a fortress, adorned with trophies from conquered worlds, crystalline structures that shimmered with an inner light, skins of beasts from uncharted territories, and weapons of defeated foes displayed with a curator's care. The decor was not merely for show, it was a statement of power, a constant reminder to all who entered of the dominance of the Zorvax. As he turned away from the viewport, Drake's thoughts were a whirlwind of strategy and ambition. The upcoming Galactic Unity Summit was a thorn in his side, a gathering that threatened to weave alliances he could not control. Humanity's involvement was particularly irksome, a wild card that could upset the delicate balance of power Drake had meticulously cultivated. Seated at his command table, Drake convened a clandestine meeting with his top advisors, a select group of tacticians and spies cloaked in the shadows of the room. The air was thick with anticipation, the only light emanating from the table illuminating their determined faces. "Report," Drake commanded, his voice a low rumble that resonated through the chamber. A figure detached itself from the shadows, its form sleek and movements fluid. "Our agents are in place within Starpoint Delta," the spy master reported. "We have infiltrated several delegations, and our listening devices are active. The humans in particular are proving to be as naive as expected, broadcasting their hopes for peace like a beacon." Drake's lips curled into a sardonic smile. "Excellent. The stage is set then. We move forward with the operation at my command. I want the summit disrupted, but subtly. We must not be seen as the aggressors. Let the galaxy blame humanity's overreaching ambition." The warlord stood, pacing slowly as he outlined his plan. "We will stage a series of accidents and minor sabotages, enough to sow distrust and chaos. I want the delegations questioning each other's motives, especially the humans. By the time we are done, the idea of an alliance will be poisoned in their minds." One of the advisors, a strategist with keen eyes, raised a concern. "Warlord, the humans are unpredictable. Their captain Holden has a reputation for cunning. Shall we prepare a contingency?" Drake paused, considering. "Yes, keep a close watch on Holden. If he becomes troublesome, we may need to expedite his departure from the summit." As the meeting concluded, the advisors melted back into the darkness, each to their task. Drake returned to the viewport, his gaze lost in the stars. His mind, ever calculating, played through scenarios of destruction and victory. The summit would be the proving ground, not just for the fragile unity of the galaxy, but for the supremacy of the Zorvax. And as the stars bore silent witness, Drake's ambition cast a long shadow across the cosmos, the echoes of his plans whispering like the chilling winds of an oncoming storm. As the Galactic Unity Summit approached, the corridors of Starpoint Delta buzzed with an electrifying mix of anticipation and underlying tension. The station, a sprawling behemoth of technology and diplomacy, had been polished to a gleaming shine. Its walls, embedded with screens and data panels, flickered with multilingual welcome messages and schedules of the summit's proceedings. In the midst of this interstellar hub, Captain James Holden navigated the complex labyrinth of political intrigue, with a careful balance of diplomacy and subtle investigation. The recent reports of minor malfunctions and unexplained delays had not escaped his notice, and his instincts told him that these were not mere coincidences. Holden's crew, a diverse group of humans and allied species, became integral in the subtle surveillance and security measures that had quietly been tightened around the summit areas. Each member was handpicked for their skills and loyalty, and their backgrounds were as varied as the galaxy itself. There was Lieutenant Mira Chang, an expert in cybersecurity, whose sharp eyes missed nothing on the surveillance feeds. Then there was Soren, a giant of a man from the frontier colonies, whose strength was only matched by his fierce protectiveness of his crewmates. Among the alien delegates, a few had begun to stand out as potential allies or sources of information. There was Ambassador Lyria of the Silarian Order, a being of translucent skin and serene demeanor, who seemed particularly keen on fostering a strong bond with humanity. Her motivations were yet unclear, but her diplomatic overtures had been noted by Holden and his team. Meanwhile, in the less frequented parts of the station, clandestine meetings and covert exchanges hinted at the undercurrents of discord threading through the summit. Delegates whispered in shadowed corners, casting suspicious glances around before speaking in hushed tones. Holden, dressed in civilian attire to blend in, observed these exchanges from a distance, his trained eyes catching the subtle signs of espionage. One evening, as the artificial sun of the station dipped below the horizon of the viewing decks, creating a twilight that would last only an hour, Holden arranged to meet with Ambassador Lyria in one of the many gardens aboard Starpoint Delta. The garden was a masterpiece of exobiology, with flora from 100 worlds creating a tapestry of alien beauty. The air was heavy with the scent of Nectarix blossoms, a sweet-smelling plant from Lyria's homeworld, which glowed softly in the dim light. "Ambassador Lyria, thank you for meeting me," Holden began, his voice low and even. I believe our goals for this summit align more closely than you might think. Lyria's eyes, reflecting the hues of the garden's bioluminescent plants, regarded him with a calm intelligence. Captain Holden, it is in the interests of the Silurian Order to see peace maintained. The galaxy is at a tipping point. It needs a gentle hand, not a clenched fist. Their conversation meandered through diplomatic niceties before delving into more substantive matters. Lyria shared her concerns about the rising tensions and the subtle disruptions that had marred the preliminary talks. There are those who would see this summit fail, she confided. We must be vigilant. Holden nodded, his mind racing with the implications of her words. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, but the full picture was still obscured by the shadows of unknown adversaries. As they parted ways, the night deepening around them, Holden felt the weight of the coming days. The summit was more than a political gathering. It was a battlefield of ideologies and wills. He returned to his quarters, his thoughts a whirlwind of strategies and contingencies. The night passed slowly, with the stars wheeling silently overhead, indifferent to the dramas unfolding in their shadow. The dawn of the summit day brought with it a palpable change in the atmosphere of Starpoint Delta. The station was now in full alert, its security protocols subtly enhanced, its staff on constant vigilance. Holden, dressed once again in the uniform of a captain, met his crew in the command center. Their faces were set, their determination clear. Today we set the course for the future, he addressed them, his voice firm. Let's ensure it's one we can all live with. As the first light of the artificial dawn washed over Starpoint Delta, the summit officially commenced with a grand opening ceremony in the main assembly hall, a vast, domed structure that echoed with the footsteps of myriad species, each delegate moving beneath banners representing their worlds, fluttering in the gentle artificial breeze, created to mimic a serene earth morning. The hall buzzed with the low murmur of hundreds of conversations, interspersed with the digital chimes that signaled the beginning of the session. Captain James Holden, standing among his crew, scanned the crowd with a practiced eye, noting the careful postures and cautious smiles exchanged by the delegates. Above, the great holographic projectors displayed a star map of the known galaxy, each star a potential flashpoint of conflict or cooperation. However, beneath this display of diplomatic pageantry, darker currents swirled. Unbeknownst to most attendees, Holden had received intelligence late the previous night about a potential threat targeting the summit's infrastructure. His source had been cryptic, driven by fear, but adamant that something significant was about to disrupt the proceedings. As the opening speeches began, Holden's attention was split between the orators and his discreet earpiece, through which Lieutenant Chang relayed real-time updates. The security feeds were clear so far, but the tension in her voice was palpable. Midway through the Secretary General's speech about unity and the shared future, the subtle signs of chaos began. Initially, it was just a flicker in the lighting, a brief dimming that went almost unnoticed. But it was quickly followed by a more dramatic event, a sudden failure in the artificial gravity system. For a few heart-stopping seconds, delegates and objects alike lifted into the air in a slow, surreal dance of weightlessness. Panic was immediate, but short-lived as the gravity systems rebooted, clamping everything back down with a jolt. Whispers filled the hall, turning into loud concerns and demands for explanations. Amid the confusion, Holden caught sight of a suspicious figure slipping out of the hall, a delegate from a fringe system known for its unstable politics. Commanding his team to stay on high alert, Holden excused himself and followed the suspect, his steps quick and silent on the plush carpeting of the corridor. The figure glanced back once, a flash of recognition in their eyes before they quickened their pace. The chase led Holden through the less frequented service corridors of Starpoint Delta, the pristine conditions giving way to the utilitarian metal and cables of the station's underbelly. The suspect ducked into a maintenance room, and Holden followed, ready for a confrontation. Inside, the room was dimly lit by the glow of various consoles and monitors. The figure stood by an open panel, their hand on a device that was clearly not part of the station's original equipment, a sabotage device wired into the station's core systems. "Stop," Holden commanded, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. The figure turned, a mix of defiance and fear in their eyes. "I can't let you do this," Holden continued, slowly approaching. "Whatever your reasons, jeopardizing lives isn't the way." The delegate hesitated, then deactivated the device, their shoulders slumping in defeat. "We were promised support," they whispered, almost to themselves. "Promised protection against the Zorvax." Realization dawned on Holden. This was not just a lone saboteur, but part of a larger play, a piece in the complex puzzle of galactic politics manipulated by unseen hands. Likely, Drake's. Securing the device, Holden escorted the delegate back to the main security office, where they could be safely questioned. As he walked, his mind raced with the implications of this encounter. The sabotage was meant to be a message, a demonstration of vulnerability at the heart of the summit. Returning to the hall, where calm was being slowly restored, Holden felt the weight of his next steps. He needed to expose the broader conspiracy at play, but carefully ensuring that it would not ignite the very conflict they sought to avoid. The stakes had never been higher, and Holden understood that the path forward was fraught with danger and delicate diplomacy. After the thwarted sabotage attempt, the summit's atmosphere was one of heightened alert and simmering tension. Captain James Holden, now more than ever, was aware that the eyes of the galaxy were upon him, not just as a leader, but as a symbol of humanity's earnest attempt to broker peace amidst chaos. The burden weighed heavily on him as he returned to the main assembly hall, where the delegates had reconvened, albeit with a palpable sense of unease clouding the air. In the wake of the disruption, security protocols had been doubled, with Starpoint Delta's own forces working in close coordination with Holden's team. Among the sea of faces, Holden's gaze often met with knowing looks from allies and suspicious glances from those yet convinced of humanity's integrity. Despite the setback, the summit's agenda pressed forward, driven by a universal urgency to stabilize galactic relations. Meanwhile, in a secure communications room tucked away behind the council chambers, Lieutenant Mira Chang and her team worked tirelessly to trace the origins of the sabotage device. The small, cluttered room buzzed with the hum of computers and the soft clacking of keyboards. Screens lined the walls, displaying complex data streams and security feeds. "Captain, you'll want to see this," Chang called over the comlink, her voice a mix of excitement and tension. Holden excused himself from the ongoing session under the pretext of a strategic consultation and quickly made his way to the communications room. The air was cooler here, the gravity of space more tangible in the windowless confines. Chang greeted him with a grim nod, pointing to a holographic display where a series of communications were being decrypted in real time. "We traced the device's signature. It's linked to a network that spans several systems supposedly under the influence of the Zorvax fleet." The implications were clear and damning. Holden's jaw tightened as he processed the information. "This is solid evidence, but it's also a spark that could ignite war if we're not careful with how we present it," he murmured, his mind racing through scenarios. Armed with this new intelligence, Holden knew that his next steps required a delicate balance of tactical disclosure and diplomatic finesse. He needed to confront Warlord Drake, but in a manner that upheld the summit's fragile decorum and prevented an outright conflict. With a strategic plan forming, Holden summoned a closed meeting with the summit's leading ambassadors, including those from species historically neutral or sympathetic to humanity. The room chosen for the meeting was circular, with a large oval table at the center, fostering a sense of equality and openness among those gathered. As the delegates settled into their seats, the tension was palpable. Holden stood at the head of the table, his posture composed, his expression resolute. "Thank you for joining this emergency council," he began, his voice steady. "I understand the risks of what I'm about to disclose, but believe transparency is our best path forward." He then detailed the findings, carefully revealing the evidence of Drake's involvement without directly inciting a call to arms. The room was silent as the gravity of the accusations sank in, each delegate processing the potential ramifications for their own worlds. The response was a mix of outrage, concern, and in some cases quiet acknowledgement. Several ambassadors voiced their support for a thorough investigation, stressing the need for collective action and caution. However, others were skeptical, wary of being drawn into a human-led initiative against a formidable adversary like Drake. As the meeting adjourned, Holden felt a cautious optimism. The seeds of unity were sown, fragile yet vital. He knew the coming days would test the resilience of these newly formed alliances as they prepared to address the full summit with the revelations. Returning to the bustling corridors of Starpoint Delta, Holden was acutely aware of the many challenges ahead. But armed with truth and a coalition of the willing, he was determined to steer the summit not towards conflict, but towards a revelation that could perhaps end Drake's reign of manipulation and fear. The battle for truth was just beginning, and Holden was ready to lead the charge. As dawn broke over Starpoint Delta, the light filtering through the massive viewports cast long shadows across the conference hall, now silent and tense in anticipation of the day's crucial sessions. Captain James Holden stood before the gathered assembly, a mix of determination and diplomatic calm etched on his face. Today he would present the evidence linking Warlord Drake to the sabotage attempts that had threatened not just the summit, but the fragile peace it sought to cement. The hall, a vast amphitheater of polished metal and translucent panels, hummed with the quiet murmur of delegates from countless worlds, each representing civilizations vast and varied. Above the great dome displayed a slowly rotating hologram of the galaxy, a reminder of what was at stake. Holden began with a careful recap of the events, his voice resonant and clear. "We stand at a crossroads," he declared, "between division and unity, suspicion and trust. The path we choose today will define the future of our galaxy." As he presented the intercepted communications and the dismantled sabotage device, evidence of Drake's covert operations, the response was a mixture of shock and murmurs of validation from those who had suspected or suffered from Drake's manipulations in the past. Warlord Drake, present under the pretense of diplomatic immunity, stood with a stoic expression, his eyes narrow slits of calculated calm. But even he could not entirely mask the flicker of concern, as the weight of evidence began to tilt the room against him. Holden, navigating the tense atmosphere, extended an invitation for Drake to respond, a move that adhered to the diplomatic protocols of the summit and offered a veneer of fairness even to those accused. Drake's reply was a carefully worded denial, a blend of feigned outrage and a call for unity against what he termed as baseless accusations aimed at sowing discord. The room was polarized until Ambassador Lyria of the Solarian Order rose to speak. Her voice, usually serene, carried a new sharpness as she recounted her own experiences with Drake's aggressions, previously unspoken in the interests of maintaining a diplomatic facade. "Truth," she stated, "is the cornerstone of trust. Without it there can be no real peace." Her testimony was a catalyst, prompting others to share their own encounters and suspicions about Drake's dealings. The collective narratives wove a tapestry of deceit and manipulation that piece by piece dismantled Drake's defenses. In a pivotal turn, a representative from the Zorvax's own ranks, moved by a desire for change, confirmed parts of the allegations, citing Drake's ambition as a threat, not only to their neighbors but to their own people's future. This internal dissent marked a significant shift in the proceedings, isolating Drake and swinging the majority towards calling for his accountability. As the session drew to a close, the Assembly voted overwhelmingly to impose sanctions on Drake and to initiate a formal investigation into his actions, with the possibility of a tribunal. The decision was met with a mixture of relief and somber acknowledgement of the challenges ahead. Holden, in the quiet aftermath of the vote, felt a weary satisfaction. The summit had not only exposed a tyrant, but had also paved the way for a more honest dialogue between the galaxy's civilizations. This was diplomacy in action, messy and fraught with peril, but ultimately driven by a desire for peace and stability. As delegates began to disperse, planning sessions for rebuilding trust and forging new alliances, Holden took a moment to reflect on the day's achievements. The path to reconciliation would be long and uncertain, but for the first time in many cycles, it seemed wholly possible. Walking back through the now quiet corridors of Starpoint Delta, Holden felt the weight of the past days lift slightly from his shoulders. He had played his part, not just as a captain or a diplomat, but as a member of a galactic community, striving towards a brighter, united future. As the final day of the Galactic Unity Summit dawned, the great halls and corridors of Starpoint Delta were filled with a cautious optimism. The delegates, once divided by suspicions and secret allegiances, now engaged in open dialogues, their discussions animated by the possibilities of a new era of cooperation. Captain James Holden walked among them, a quiet observer of the shifting dynamics he had helped catalyze. The main assembly hall, where just days ago accusations and evidence had flown like meteors across a tense sky, was now reconfigured for the closing ceremony. The central dais, which had served as a battleground of wits and wills, was adorned with the flags of the participating civilizations, each banner a testament to the galaxy's vibrant diversity. Holden took his place among the delegates, his uniform crisp, the insignia of the HSS Pioneer gleaming under the soft lights. Beside him, Ambassador Lyria shared a smile, her earlier support having been crucial in the diplomatic victory over Drake. Across the hall, even former skeptics nodded respectfully at him, their gestures acknowledging his role in unveiling the truth. The Secretary General of the Galactic Council, a venerable figure from an ancient star system, rose to the podium. His voice, deep and resonant, filled the hall. "We are gathered here not just to conclude proceedings, but to mark the beginning of something profound. The challenges we've faced together have reminded us of our shared destinies and interlinked futures." As the speech continued, Holden's thoughts drifted to the journey that had brought him here. From the silent vigils in the cold expanse of space to the heated debates within the station's walls, every step had been a test of endurance and belief in the potential for peace. The ceremony progressed with the ratification of new treaties and agreements, each aimed at enhancing trade, security, and cultural exchange. Delegates came forward to sign the documents, their signatures symbolic seals on their commitment to a united galactic community. Then, a surprise announcement was made: the establishment of a new interstellar body to oversee the implementation of the summit's resolutions, and to ensure that the events leading to Drake's exposure would not be repeated. Holden, in recognition of his diplomatic efforts and steadfastness, was invited to lead this body. The applause that followed was not just for him but for the hope that this new institution represented. As the applause died down, Holden addressed the assembly. His speech was not long, but every word carried the weight of his experiences and the hopes of countless beings. "Let us move forward not as separate entities," he stated, "but as members of a single vast community, bound by our shared stars and common aspirations." The closing of the summit was marked by a symbolic gesture: the dimming of the hall's lights, and the slow illumination of the star map overhead, each point of light representing a star system, now connected by lines of light. It was a visual representation of the galaxy's newly reaffirmed connections, a network of cooperation that spanned the vastness of space. As the delegates dispersed, many paused to thank Holden, their words sincere and their handshakes firm. He felt a mixture of relief and responsibility, aware that the real work would begin once the celebrations ended. Walking back to his quarters, Holden stopped by a viewport, looking out at the cosmos that was both his home and his charge. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter, a little more hopeful. He realized then that the summit's success was not just in the agreements signed or the conflicts averted, but in the affirmation that even among the stars unity was not just possible but necessary. The quiet hum of the station around him felt like a gentle promise, a whisper of the peace that could be achieved in the vast, beautiful expanse of space. And with a final glance at the stars, Captain James Holden turned away from the viewport, ready to lead not just a ship or a delegation but a galactic effort towards enduring peace.